When we think about the word work, it still conjures all of these feelings of boredom and something you have to do as opposed to something you want to do. Why do you think work is still such a boring thing for so many people?
Obligations. That's the one word that comes to mind when you talk about work.
Okay.
Am I choosing to work or do I have to work? And of course, the Monday feeling, right? There's this thing about Sundays made to dread the fact that tomorrow is Monday. So adding to the obligation of work, you don't really feel the same. When you talk about holiday is a choice. So you do have that feeling, I'm going on holiday, I'm going to relax, I want to do what I want. So I guess the question would be, how do you turn work from obligation to make it as close as possible to being a holiday, knowing that, well, it's not a holiday really, because it's still an obligation. But how do we kind of reframe that and make it possible for you and I and everybody else?
Yeah. How do we?
Well, that's something I've always told myself. And in fact, one thing I've done throughout my career is to actually quit my job mentally, even if I don't want to quit my job every 6 months. And the reason why I do that is to turn work from being an obligation to what I want, right? Why am I going there? Why am I still working for that company? What are the things that are positive and negatives? The positives, do I want them to continue? The negative, is this something that leads me to moving somewhere else? Or something that leads me to staying? And if I want to stay, how can I change the negative so that where I am becomes more of a workplace, that holiday feeling, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to work for money and pleasure. So I want to change work from just the money aspect, because that's crucial, it's important, to being more of that place I spend a long time of my life, and how do I have fun doing the things that I love, bringing my creativity, my personality, and who I am. So that's how I try to change this idea of, work being an obligation to, okay, I'm going to do things that I don't particularly like admin maybe, but there is a part of my work, the reason why I sign up to this and the reason why I'm coming to this, that I need to remind myself and make sure that I can still do those things as I continue in my career.
When you describe this, like after 6 months, I mentally almost check out, that sounds like quiet quitting. But then when you explain it, it doesn't sound like that's what you're describing. So what's the nuance here?
Yes, a very good question, because I'm not asking people to quit, right? That's not the point. The point is to remove the feelings that hold us back to go where we want to go, right? So if you think about what happens in life, people stays in a relationship just because it's easier. And sometimes you stay in a job because it's easier. You know your coworkers. Maybe you've been there for a long time. They respect you. Or it's difficult. You don't like it, but you don't want to start again. Right? So when I mentally quit, I remove those shackles from myself and I look at it as a blank canvas, right? And I look at it trying to find the opportunities and also really go deeper into myself and figure out where I need to grow next for what I want to do. So if I don't have to worry about the fact that, should I quit or should I not quit? That question itself raises a lot of anxiety. Should I have to ask myself in terms of, should I get a promotion or not? Should I do this or not? When you remove all of that, you just look at the fact that I'm actually surrendering, I'm flowing and I'm letting this go. And if this is the end, it is the end, right? I started that mindset and then I take a step back, right? Even if this is the end, where do I want to go next? Or why should I stay? So it's kind of, I'm convincing myself to stay, and then I appreciate the positive that maybe I take for granted. And if I look at the other aspect, which is, why should I go? And I look at the reason why I'm not enjoying the work. It could be maybe I need more responsibilities, but then it opens a question, if I ask for those opportunities, or maybe this happened to me a while back, I love the team, I love the company, but the project we were working on was just bonkers. And I realized it was because it wasn't led properly. We didn't have the right people to bring the team together, people from different countries. And I thought, right, if we could fix that bit, I would go back to enjoying my playground, my work, right? By looking into that, I could kind of see the things I like and the things I do not like. That's when you ask yourself the question, is it worth staying longer here for this if I continue to grow? Because the problem with that company, it was a nice place to work. You could come to work whenever you want to. You can go and play tennis at lunchtime and come back to work. You could literally stay there for 20, 25 years or 30 years. but is that the right thing for my career and my growth as a person? So it's not just about leaving because of the negative aspect. It's also leaving because you might not be able to grow because you become complacent and love the place.
It's opportunity cost. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the show, or back to the show for those of you who aren't new here. Getting lots of new faces these days, and so I just wanted to take a quick sec to introduce myself. Hey, I'm Seven, and also to give you a quick announcement. As a little bit of background, this show used to be very focused on what it meant to be a leader, but I quickly realized I already had my answer, which is that I believe you already are one. And it's just about becoming more of that person you want to be. So we're talking about the world, self-leadership, personal development, humanity, discovery, self-discovery, and so much more. This is a place where deep conversations happen in a way that helps you become more of that person you want to be. And so if you appreciate that and you want to help us grow, but I know you're tired of people hearing, we've been hearing this for over a decade, like and subscribe and share the episode, and I get it, but look, it is genuinely the biggest and best thing you can do. I don't play ads or any crap like that. I do this and take this time to say thank you because I appreciate you and where this show is going. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Lots of love, and let's get on with the episode. There's an opportunity cost of doing anything, and sometimes the cost is greater, but we can't. There's something I call coined the timeline B fallacy.
Okay.
So sometimes you go, what if? Right?
Yeah.
What if this? What if I had done that? All the what ifs are lies. They're traps. They don't exist. Yeah. We construct an alternate timeline in our heads of what if I had done this? What if I had married this different person, or done this different job, or quit my job and started my business, or did that sooner? But we're not living in that timeline B. You only have timeline A. Any what if, any dream of what could have been is a fallacy. So what can I do to make this the most I can of what I have now? And that means that we need to, I guess, really, really, really critically judge if we are in love with where we are and who we are, and analyze it from an opportunity cost perspective. So in the now, not in the future or the past, but in the now, what opportunity am I missing out on?
Exactly.
There's an underlying undercurrent here, though, of fear.
Yeah.
What if I'm too afraid of the hard decision, the challenging decision to move on, quit my job, start a startup instead, or whatever else I want to do? What if I'm in this really tough position where I just don't know? Maybe I've tried to weigh up the opportunity cost. This is potential risk versus potential risk of staying where I am. This is a risk to everything. So the risk of staying where I am is that I don't grow into my full potential. But it's a safer risk. It's already easier. We human beings, we much prefer the things that we are currently doing, the devil you know versus the devil you don't. How do I work with and overcome this fear of change?
Well, ask yourself whether you want to live for now or live for the legacy. Ask yourself where you want to be in 5 years, right? And also, if you can, write it down, those moments where you're asking yourself those questions, and go back in your diaries and start counting how many times you've written this down. I think to me, that's the biggest thing. Is time goes fast and slow at the same time. I don't know how to explain that, right? So if you think about a year, when you start January, we always like, oh gosh, especially me, my birthday is in December. Okay. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got about 300 days until my next birthday, right? But then as the year goes on, you feel like, oh, it flew by. Yeah. But in the moment, it feels quite long. So when you have those moments when you think, I need to make a shift in my life, whether it's work, career, starting a business, whatever it is, the decision and the fear is always greater because of what I want to do now. But when you start journaling it, or when you start really having those markers, when you sit down, even if it's a quarterly review of yourself, every 6 months, you write those things down. And when you review them and you ask yourself, actually, how long has it been since I've been having those thoughts? Yeah. You realize that you've been going through the same patterns for 2, 3, 4 years. And that's when you ask yourself, if I had jumped 4 years ago, what would I have been today?
I was going like, how do we shock ourselves? Sometimes we need a shock effect.
Yeah.
Oh, a wake-up call. But actually, you kind of just answered it, which is, if I know 3 months ago I was thinking about quitting the same amount that I was already thinking about it, I was thinking about doing other things just as much, I felt the same ways, then they were really strong that I was missing something out. Now I have the comparison.
Yeah.
That means it sounds like you're recommending a journaling practice, a self-reflection process of some kind. So let's get really practical and specific now. What does this process look like? Exactly how often should I do it? Best case scenario. So I know there's, maybe 3 months, maybe 1 week, but best case scenario, how often do you think someone should be doing something like this? And exactly what questions should we be asking ourselves?
Yeah. So best case scenario, I like to keep it simple because, you can do a lot of different things, like you said, 3 months, every month, or the likes. But at the end of the day, we know that it will not going to happen, right? The things are really, even for myself, where I tend to do it and make myself accountable, and I try to do that with my clients and other people as well, do it every 6 months. And the best time to do it, one summer. After your summer holidays or during, but there is a point in summer where just before summer, there's a massive rush to get to summer as if the world's going to end. Then after summer, there's a rush that starts again. But there's that sweet spot where you feel a lot more relaxed, where you've put some distance between the pain that you have, whether it's pain from work, life, whatever it is, and what comes next. You have that place where there's a little bit more of confidence as well. The weather is much, much nicer, especially in England. And so there's this positive feeling that goes inside of you that will help you anyway. And the second time is Christmas. The sweet spot is that week between Christmas and New Year. Most people don't work, or maybe they might work 1 or 2 days, but you just came out, of course, obviously, don't do it on Christmas Day, after Boxing Day. I know that family Christmas always comes up with certain types of feelings, but regardless of that, you spend some days away from work where you can actually really clear your mind. That's why I do it twice a year, because I know that around those times, there's a lot of other things around me that will happen naturally, like the holidays, which is forced. I didn't choose to go on holiday. Work stops, so I have to go on holiday. And I spend time with friends, or I had a lot of chocolate, so I feel a little bit better. So your brain subconsciously is already groomed to letting go of a lot of the stress and negativity. And it's kind of looking at what happens next, right? September is, how do I end this year? Am I still happy to end the year? And then December is usually, how do I start the next year, right? So when you have those two times of the year where you can do this exercise, the question is, first, you do a reflection. What have I done, right? What have I done and what have I achieved? And be brutally honest with that. We are really, really experts at negatives. I mean, if you ask me 5 things I've done wrong, I can tell you 10. But if you ask me 5 things I've done right, I will struggle after 3. But this exercise will really help you to see the journey that you've covered and really trying to see all of the opportunity that you've taken, the little tiny fears. It's not just about the big thing like, oh, I spoke at an event. It could be something as, for the first time in my life, I managed to challenge my boss in a meeting because I knew that this was needed for the team. Really small things like that will help you with your confidence. Once you've journaled the positive, then go on to the negatives, right? Write down what you wish you would have done, what happened, how do you feel emotionally. If you're going to cry, let it go. It's normal. Helps you to actually clear your brain even better. And once you have that clarity, before you move on to the next one, go back and read the positives, right? So that you can reframe your brain so that you went from high, positive, negative, go back high. And that's when you start looking at yourself and say, right, if I do nothing, if I continue doing exactly what I do right now, where would I be this time next year, right? Would I actually want to be there? And that will help you to really start seeing and conquering the fear factor that you've mentioned before. The other question is, if I wanted to change, where would I start in terms of change? What is that one small thing? Change, especially if the fear is much stronger, you have a lot of anxiety, don't look at it as, I need to quit my job straight away. It could be that over the next 3 months, I'm going to start working on quitting my job. What are the steps do I need to take? It could be improving my LinkedIn, improving my connections, reaching out to other people. Or if you want to stay, but you don't really like your job, the things that you want to change, it could be that you start putting a list of, maybe speak to my manager and ask if there are other opportunities. Speak to my team and ask them if they felt the same problems that I'm feeling, and there's a way we can solve it as a team, where the workplace playground come into effect there. And this is really how you start taking something that scares you and you break it down into smaller steps where you make yourself accountable of changing the big picture, but it will take a little bit longer, but write down the steps you want. And the final thing, if there is someone that you trust, ideally share it with them when you can, because that will make you even more accountable and allow you to go from just, I've written all those things down, I've done this exercise. How do I make sure that throughout the year, I will actually start taking the first steps to where I want to be and what I want to change until the next cycle?
You have a real perspective shift here, right? So I want to learn more about this playground effect. But before we do, what led to you having this change of perspective that things need to be more like a playground, things need to be more fun, that this very practical self-awareness, self-reflection exercise you prescribed, which a lot of people will say is great, but very rarely do or make it practical. So what is your story? What is your what happened in your life to lead to this perspective change for you?
I think for me, in a way, I was lucky to have lived in a world where there were no a lot of social media, so you have to read books, the full thing. But I think that was great for me. And my biggest shift in my life was when I was younger, moving different countries, got to the UK, especially in Scotland, when I was about 15 years old, trying to navigate the system, learning new language, and just so much going on. And this level of loneliness that you can't even describe because you don't know it's a thing, and you also just need to keep going, right? And what happened by the time I got to 17, 18, I didn't even realize how depressed I was until I went to the library looking for my next Agatha Christie, because that was the only thing I was reading. I finished all the books that I had, and like, oh, right, now I need to read other things. And walking around, I found a book that was titled, Are You Happy? And that's my introduction to self-help books in a way. And I was just crying in the library. I'm like, what do you even mean about happiness? I don't even know what that concept is. I need to. So I started reading about a lot of concepts much younger, which really helped me. Then I started listening to a lot of people like Jim Rohn, old school, I promise you, more people don't listen to him anymore. But those old school inspirational speakers. And there was a lot of things that they used to talk about in terms of self-reflections, in terms of mindset, in terms of always going. And my mindset was, I have to, right? I took the positive aspect, but I pushed it too far in a way where my entire goal for that period was, I have to go to uni. I need to figure out what I need to do. I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I have to go to uni. I have to graduate for uni, and I have to make sure that my life will be better after university, blah, 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 blah. So I did that. I ended up in uni, studied software engineering. I was super shy. I didn't really like people. Likely I made some friends there, but I was just kind of surviving. So I felt like up until I got my first job and actually moved to Cambridge, my life has been about surviving. And in Cambridge, when I got there, I realized that, okay, it wasn't too bad. You know, I was in uni, but most of my time is in library. Then I would still go out. Don't worry, I'll still make sure I can go overnight and come back home at 3 a.m. But the next day I'm in the library. So I think the shift there happened when I started looking at, again, I was still reading a lot, and I started reading about NLP and things like that, psychology. I absolutely loved it. But the question shifted to, do you really want to do this for the rest of your life? No, it's great to have a high level of discipline, which I learned through the books. But is that all you want? Who is Naili? Who is Naili if she's not studying? Okay, I go out with my friends and I'm studying, but what else? I was super introverted at the time, very shy, and luckily I was in a great job, but I thought, I just don't want to be that person anymore. But I didn't know how to go out. So that's why I started this concept of experimentation, because what I love about everything I was listing, it was always about nurturing yourself, but take a step further. So I was like, oh no, I played video games all my life, and I close my eyes, all I see is like Mario Brothers, where you go to different worlds. And I thought, right, Naili 1.1, she's got this. All right, I'm going to go to Naili 1.2, who I want to be. I want to be able to speak up, be at meetings, and not feel like every time I open my mouth, I'm just going to, crumble. I want to understand a bit more about myself, get out of my house, go to my safety zone. And that's how I shift from where I was to how do I experiment to get to where I want to go. And at the same time, how do I make it fun? Because I've always played video games growing up. And to me, if I do anything I do, even if it's just boring accounting for my business, because it's VAT season, which I actually need to do. Yes. How do I make that process fun, right? And that's then how you translate it to, but what about the rest of your life? Because I'm more than just my business. I want to learn something else. I want to grow. I want to find out about myself. I want to deal with my own emotions. But how do I turn everything I do into this like workplace where it's on my terms, even if there are obligations that always surround me?
It sounds like at a lot of points there you were feeling a little bit lost, maybe very lost. Exactly where do I go? Exactly what do I do? And it's interesting that almost earlier on in the story, you find this book about what is happiness.
Yeah.
What do you think you were searching for all those times you were lost about the career, lost about the things you wanted? What's the root thing you were searching for? Because it's easy to say it's happiness. And then in that way, it becomes an interesting full circle moment. Happiness is something we sometimes think we want, not realizing that it isn't just something you achieve. Yeah. It's a state you keep up. What do you think you were really searching for in that moment or in those moments?
Myself. Who is Naili?
Yeah.
Because I always grew up with a certain vision of who I am, like my map of the world or the belief of who I am, the thing that we tell ourselves, like, oh, Naili is the person that cannot speak up. Naili is the person that cannot look at people in the eye.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I wanted to find out, is there anything more than all of the voices in my head? And if this is just it, what is the point of being alive? I mean, no offense, but that narrative, I didn't really like it, but it was so real to me. It was who I was. And I felt like by searching for happiness, like you said, which actually doesn't even exist because the world that I live in is not a happy world, but it's just a string of happy moments if you create those happy moments. Yes. And that's the thing that most people forget. It's not about being happy all the time. It's about being connected and letting that happiness flow through you through the state of being present. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I've been looking for. And that's, to me, it's not even, I wouldn't even say if I found it or not, because that's another question, right? If I found that state of happiness or if I found what I was looking for me, it's more about the excitement of going through that journey without even knowing everything that I was telling you about. It's not like I took a conscious decision. It was small decision I took. And now looking at the perspective going backward, I can see the pattern. But in the moment, what I was looking for was probably just trying to be a better version of me, really wanted to let go of who I was before and be the people. Like, when you go to a party, like, I wish I could be that guy or that girl that can just talk to anyone. But it wasn't me. I was just like waiting for someone to say hi. I'm like, hi. And then like, oh my God, now I have to say, how are you? How are you? I'm all right. Oh gosh, what do people say after how are you? You know what I mean? I actually had to really book to learn those things. But that was kind of what I wanted. I wanted to be the other person. And as I got to a point in my life that I thought, actually, do I want to be the other person? Or how do I become okay with who I am and the limitation that I have socially, keep on getting better at it, but knowing that there's part of me that will always be the same. And that's pretty much my journey.
And you asked the question, or you said what you were searching for, you were asking yourself the question, who am I? Mm-hmm. Who are you?
A work in progress.
Yeah, I love that. I like that. Yeah.
I am a work in progress. I think I will never arrive to the point where I'm fully done. Because if I get to that point, there won't be a reason to leave anymore. Mm. I love this idea of always playing, always discovering new things, always even just inside of me and going, oh, actually, I thought this was always right. Or even in the practices we're talking about, I've always used to do this. Maybe I could do something else, right? I've always been very disciplined. Maybe being too disciplined also stopped me from other things. And it's actually that really drives me. And when I work with people, when I work with teams, it's also being able to identify that in other people, right? And it's really about always evolving. And yeah, this saddest thing for me would be to wake up one day and I realize, oh, I've done everything now. I'm like, oh, so what's next?
When who you are is linked to achievements of some kind, then it's never enough, right? So there's almost this, the ideal state is a state of contented present contentedness. Yeah. Better English, shall we? Where we're in love with who we are now, also knowing that who we are is not the finished product, quote unquote, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. Is that person ever the finished product? No, probably not. And that's probably a good thing because that keeps life interesting. I run a number of events that are very focused on our personal development. And when we're doing introductions, we maybe go around the circle or something, and you must introduce yourself. So you say your name, and then I say you must say who you are without any identifiers of your physical life, not what you do or anything to do with your title or role, nothing to do with your physical or mental identity, who you would say you are when you strip back all the superficial things that society uses as labels. And the reason I do that is because I released this article on my Substack recently, actually, not long before recording this, which was talking about the storylines of the mind. So when you talk about narrative, I think this is really interesting because if I ask someone who they are, there are several levels to that question. Who they are is all those identifiers that I just said I don't let people usually say. Then you've got your unconscious patterns, the narratives that we tell ourselves that become the storylines of the mind, that this is the story of who I am. So I'm still identified with something. It's a more complex story. The next layers up are what I am when I don't have those things, what I'm grateful for, and eventually just the fact that we are. Yeah. And when we get stuck on those lower levels, we think happiness is a thing to get and achieve, instead of going with the flow through life, being this constant journey of learning and loving and discovering. And that's a place that's much more fun. But I know what it's like to not have that. And because not having that, you're always left feeling a bit empty. And that emptiness can be really debilitating.
Yes. And I really love how you describe that lower level, because I think a lot of people never get there. And I think that getting to that lower level will help you to go through the toughest times in your life. Because even if you have nothing, you've lost everything, or things are not going the right way, if you are connected to that lower level, you always have at least one thing to smile about. Maybe not every day, but when you finally have the courage to look up, those things will always be there. Even if everything else that you've mentioned, the identifiers and the higher levels are lost for whatever reason, the bottom part is always going to be there for you.
You mentioned this concept of the playground effect. To play devil's advocate, right? I'm immediately thinking, playground? I'm not a child. Don't tell me to be on a playground. I'm serious. Work. Fully's always serious. Never having fun. Fun is a thing kids do. What's your response?
This is really sad because, what you've said is exactly right. When I first started my business, what I wanted to go for with my tagline was turn your life and workplace into a playground. And everybody at working in HR that was looking into this was like, I actually don't want my work to be a playground. I'm like, yeah, but you're losing out. But what is a playground, right? I've even forgot the name of this philosopher that came up and created or crafted the playground that we see today. Is a German chap. And what he did was to look at how kids used to learn back in the days. When you first start, they used to just go to school where you learn your ABCs, how to write, absolutely everything else. But it felt like by learning just based on schools, you strip away the other aspect and the other senses that made a child a child. So that's why I designed a playground where when you look at the playground, you see a lot of kids running around. And I don't know, some people feel stressed because maybe they're going to take the kids there in a while, in a bit, and it will happen there. Other people feel happy, especially if you don't have a child, so you don't have to worry about how dirty they're going to get when they get home, right? So when I got past the playground, I was very happy. But essentially, when you really take it apart, what you see is a connection that cannot be explained, right? Kids that do not know each other will come together and work. There's different equipment there based on different age. Those, even if you have to climb, it's always made that if you're a certain age, you get to a certain level. As you get older, you can go higher. So they are learning to climb without anybody really teaching them how to climb. But by looking at other people, they developed teamwork skills, leadership skills, because there's always one person that boss people around, but also empathy, because there's always one child that want to be nice to other people, which the other child will also learn if they have less empathy for whatever reasons, right? There's a lot of things that happen in terms of human development that is really essential. But the other question is, what is the task? The task is to play and have fun, but it's whatever the task is going to be. What is the parallel when you bring it to work? And when I talk about the playground at work, the first thing that people think about play at work, it will be things like video games. I work in tech, especially in startup scale-ups works. It's really common to have a video game room, which is amazing. I mean, I'm more than happy to go there. But if I don't like my work or I don't like what I do in the company, I will spend more time there having fun by still being depressed. Free food is the other thing. Oh, startup, seriously, what's the deal with free food? Thank you, please don't take it away. But if I don't like the company and I'm depressed, that won't work. Third one, especially the big companies, they love those campuses, right? Oh, you have a nap room, you have like one of the Google offices that I saw online, there's like a slide. I would love to work there, just to go from one level to another, go down the slide. Again, if I don't like my work, well, great, I'm going to spend my time there still being depressed or anxious and not being the best I can be. So if you remove all of that, what is left and how do I play at work? When I sign up for a job, that's my passion. For most people, there are times where it's not. But for the most part, we all have a skill set. So as an engineer, I love coding. As marketers, I like, discovering new market or growing a company, whatever it is. That is the game, right? So I'm not even talking about everything else that you want to bring in the company extra, like the day away trips. I'm talking about the actual game that you do on a daily basis. So then how do I turn that into a playground? Or how do I look at it as a playground? What are the frustrations that I have as an engineer when I want to code? It could be that I don't have the right tools, I don't have the direction, or there's no vision. I don't really know what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. One department doesn't get along with the other department, which means that even if I have to do a marketing campaign and I don't work with I don't have a good relationship with the product team, which tends to happen a lot, and I'm not enjoying the moment I come to work, going back to the work Monday feeling, right? Before we add all of the extras, how do we solve those tiny layers going really low from the trust, building trust in a company, within the coworkers, within the team, to then start moving up the layers where we start looking at mission, vision, in terms of planning. Are we, each person in the team, do they understand what they need to do? And do they have the space to do it? Do they have the psychological safety to fail or to ask questions and to grow and develop? Right? And then the culture of the company in terms of the communication. How do we kind of know each other, the different departments? What I tend to do a lot when I get invited in engagement, leading the product or the tech teams, and there's a lot of conflict, most of the my team members don't really want to come to work because they're dreading the moment they have to have a meeting with another department. So how do we build those bridges back so that those meetings go back to being, right, we know that the product is late again, but this is our plan to fix it. And this is our help that we need from you. How do you guys understand how we work so that we understand how you work? It's really about bringing all those aspects around that then remove that Monday feeling and help people going from, oh my God, which happened to me. I was leading this team and one guy he told me that they're about to quit. I'm like, you can't quit. We're launching the product you've been working on for months. If you quit now, it's going to be bad. Just give me a few months and then I will try and improve it. And a few months later, he came back to me and he says, oh my God, I really love working in this company and I think I'm going to stay for a bit longer. And that is what I talk about play, Yes, the offsites are great, but people put way too much emphasis on organizing offsite as a recovery for a company that is in trouble. But it's a moment that allows people to come together and they have fun. But the real fun, the real play is actually being able to do your job. And if you allow someone to do that in the best way possible, despite the challenges of real life and obligations, they are playing. And the more they play, the more they will want to give even more to the company. And who wins? The company itself.
So it sounds like what we're trying to do is design experiments. So it's both how do I create the day-to-day processes and operations of an organization or workplace, and how are we constantly experimenting? So we're playing around and improving those things consistently. So what does a good experiment look like?
Well, the first thing is not to do it alone. I think there's two aspects. So you have the experiment first as an individual, and I always encourage people to do it as part of the thing that we talked about, the 6 months review yourself. But in addition to that, as you as the person, what do you need to grow to be able to meet to create the workplace playground for you and for others? Because that's another part where what people forget. You can go and complain and tell HR, other people, there are these problems, but what are you doing to be the solution or to help in that solution? And secondly, as a team, really talk about that, just, again, don't even create a new meeting because that's become a problem. Oh, we have to have another meeting. Most teams have a team meeting every week. One meeting, you can say, give me your updates on Slack or on Zoom or whatever. Give me your updates online. We are going to reuse exactly the same time to start looking at what is stopping us from working, right? So in the tech world, we talk a lot about retrospectives, which we do after a sprint, but think about doing a retrospective for the team. As us moving forward, as a department, individually, what are your challenges and what makes you really frustrated and how can we improve that? And it helps for other people to, the first person who's always courageous to to voice their opinion, there's always someone that says, me too. And that creates a bonding already and that level of trust because people are talking about this. And from that's when you start creating a list of experiments, right? You can't go from 0 to 100. You might need the support maybe from sales. Okay, so if I need support from sales and they really don't like us, what do I do? So with my team, we start devising experiments where over the course of 3 months, how can we once a month invite someone from sales to come to our meetings or we go to theirs, they share their processes, they share their frustration with us, they share whatever, we understand their world and we swap, right? So those are very simple things all the way from processes, from the people, from the way we work. Is there a difficult client? Why do we have a difficult client? Why is it that we don't understand each other? How have we built that platform? What can we change? Who will want to take that challenge, right? So rather than going from, we've got this difficult platform that we need to fix, just turn into a fun thing where, right, this is going to be our most challenging person. This is our game, the end of the Mario world. If we can't change the relationship with these clients, for sure we can do it with other clients because they're more difficult. So it's literally what you're doing every day. It's just work, but it's just how do you shift it so that people can really see that they are empowered to change what they need to change so that by the time you add the other layers of free food games, it's like the icing on the cake that's well baked and tastes good rather than using only that to entice people to play.
And if I was meeting a team of 6 people, 5 or 6 people, maybe it's my startup and it's a small startup, or maybe it's one team in a bigger company, and you had to run a workshop where you taught us how to do what you're describing.
Yeah.
What practically would you walk us through, make us do, make us create, make us decide? What would you teach us to do or teach me to do to implement with my team?
Yes. So the first thing that we will look into, depending on how we do it, but the first thing I will do is to first run personality profiling. And that is to help with the lower level of trust, right?
What kind of personality profiling?
It could be Myers-Briggs, it could be DISC, it could be different one. Actually, there's a startup, Home Lab, who are coming up with new way of discovering people through games. I haven't tried that one yet. I tried it, not with a team, but when I was playing those games, it's another way of playing a game to then understand your personality profile and see how it works with the team. So how do you make decisions? It's also very interesting. But I like to start with that because it helps people to understand why they make certain decisions. Why would they feel like they can't speak up? Or maybe people use the word extroverted and introverted, but that's one thing. What is behind it that you really need to understand yourself? But don't keep it for yourself. Once you have that, bring it to the team, where we'll do a bit of a tiny game to start to understand how people work together, or give a task, put people into the same personalities, give a task and watch, and you'll see that certain personality will first start talking to death about the same thing. Others will even read the instruction and will jump in. And all of that, you then get to reflect as a team, right? Because that is one of the biggest issues in teams. There's a problem. Oh, we had a part of a customer, which happened a lot, and the platform is down, great. And then management say, go into a room and start talking about this. But if you are someone with personality where you want to think first, you get to that meeting frustrated because you haven't had the time to think, even if it was 5 or 10 minutes before. So those small shifts helps people to understand that even just the way we start our meeting, we start our brainstorming sessions, are we starting it the best way to get into account how people think, right? So that game is a good one to start and have that discussions, because when you have different groups, someone will always says, oh, well, we did the right thing, but honestly, I would have preferred if I had 2 minutes, just 2 minutes where nobody was talking. Because you have the people who think and verbalize their thoughts, but that affects other people.
I would know that team really well, right? So if I'm running a bigger company, I can't remember all that about all the people. But my team managers maybe can remember their team or something. But there is some people have this challenge with these personality tests because they can be prescriptive, they can be top down, they don't really get used properly or things like this. So, I mean, how do I ensure that with what you're describing, I'm doing it right?
Yeah. So if you do that as part of a workshop, and I love this question because that's my biggest frustration, because a lot of companies will run that individually. And sometimes when you first join a company, you do that, but it doesn't get shared as a team. And for me, the most important is, one, to understand that that is only a tiny aspect of a person, and that person is bigger than that, right? And secondly, if you understand that, how do you refresh it? Bring it as part of, again, the team meetings. Every 3 months or every 4 months, talk about this again, right? Now you have ChatGPT. Just put something there. Give me a bit of a workshop that will help my team to really understand how we work together using personality types that we've already done. And small games, exercises to just bring it back to our minds. And the most importantly, the reason why I do that is not so that we kind of know which color I am, which acronyms I am, is to understand how we behave when things are difficult, right? What happens is all of us know our negatives and positives. Our negatives shows much stronger under stress, which tends to happen in most startups, scale-ups, or fast-growing companies. If I know that, then as a manager, we kind of want to have a discussion where we play a bit with, bring the negative of people's behavior, or even other people that a different personality sees the other personality without seeing you. So I'm not talking about you, Seven. I'm just talking about people with your personality. When you do this, this is how I feel. Create a level of empathy without pointing fingers directly, bringing those refreshers every 3 months in terms of the team meetings, I mean that people have that in mind. Because one of the things that people find really strange is that my work is in tech, right? Let's just put it there. I'm an engineer, and my work is leading tech teams or product teams. But I found that my job is actually easier once I can first break all those levels of the people aspect. Because then I can know that, right, I can trust that person now. I trust their output. They trust me. They trust each other. Whatever comes out of our meetings, even if it's disagreement, is not personal. I've created that world where people can speak up and we work much faster. And you can even see in the way that, oh, I want to build this feature, it's not going to work. Marketing is maybe not happy. They're like, okay, we trust that team. If they change their minds, something's happening, how do we talk about this? That is the most important thing. So if you're already doing anything, personality, anything like that, first, make sure it's not about putting people in a box. And secondly, how do you refresh people's mindsets and bring it to their lives so they don't forget? And the third part, when you have that basis, you can then start moving into the other layers of bringing the team together. Now we know each other. What are the frustrations? What are the experiments we want to run for the next 2 months or 3 months to see that we are slowly shifting the company and the way we work from, I am frustrated because every time I'm working on a project, there's no project briefs, for example. So how do I know how to build this feature? To, right, now we have this problem because we are always stretched. Why are we always stretched? Okay, this is why we always stretched. What can we do over the next 2 months? Maybe have more meetings where we look at all of the new feature and talk about them. Even if it's once a month, we review them and give it to the product owner or whoever is to write better briefs. So it's not like product owner, you're always late. Because that's what happens all the time. But it's bringing everybody on board to kind of go slowly. We understand each other. We have that trust. This is the problem that affects the team. Even if it's one individual that's not doing their jobs, But what is it that they can't do it, right? How can we help them? How can we fix it? Is it working? You see what I mean?
There's a leadership training aspect that whoever is leading each of those teams needs to have, right?
Yeah.
The genuine desire to know about the hearts and souls and minds of the people that are in that team, because this can't be prescripted and top down. I feel like our biggest challenge is going to be ourselves to doing this.
Yes.
It's I don't think it's a lot personally, but I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who is hearing this for the first time. They're a manager, they're already overwhelmed with work. Oh, how am I going to do this too? There's another thing to do.
Yeah.
What's the easiest way to get started?
The easy way, first, cancel the next or change the next team meeting. Simple. Honestly. And actually, one thing, because before I go to that, one thing I want to mention, although it can feel top down, I approach it from bottom up, because that's exactly what I did in my career. And that's how I actually moved up in my career, because from bottom up is I cannot change this myself. But what can I do in my role to improve it? And how can I convince my colleagues to improve it? Side discussions. And how can we come into a meeting and improve it ourselves? Then the manager goes, oh, they're interested in this. What can we do? Right? So it's a two-way path, because sometimes I think there's a lot of emphasis put on management, but we live in a world where we need to be honest. Sometimes you might not be a good manager. What do? You start with your work that you don't like, and if you really want to change it, that's how you approach it. Now, if I'm looking at, I'm a manager, I have zero time, and there's all of the things that needs to happen. The first thing you need to put in your mind is, if you do nothing, you will continue to feel exactly the same for the next 2 months, 3 months, a year, right?
And all that time just disappears, and then you go, oh, my year ago. Yeah. Exactly.
But if you start doing it today, you end up with a team that will actually do more. They'll be empowered. You will have less work because you might shift your focus. So one thing you want to do, you don't even need to start with a personality test at all, because that is cost. You think, oh, right, I want to start here, but now I need to ask for money. We don't want that. We just want simpler thing. Next meeting, ask your team to send you an update online, and change that meeting to really talk about how do people feel about their job and what needs to be changed. And your job is just to answer, to listen, right? To listen and encourage. Don't try to fix the problems. Don't try to take it personally. Don't try to to talk more. You want to listen more, but you want to get things out of them.
What if this isn't working because people are too afraid to say something? So there's like anonymous 360-degree feedback. How do we overcome workplace cultures that are already not very constructive?
Well, that's a bigger job, because the problem with that is that you can't go forward without the basis of the base layer of the cake, they call it, which is trust. So if you're in that situation,
that's what I'm thinking. It's like all of this hinges on trust.
Yes.
And we live in a low trust world, we're a lower trust companies, right?
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, if you're the leader, you need to do the V word, which is the most difficult thing, vulnerability. And that's what you need to start with. And that's what I start with whenever I start with most of my engagement, because I always go into places that I have low trust. And, I work in a company where I was meant to lead a team, working with customers. The customer hated that team. And inside the company, nobody wanted to work with us. We had no support from all of the other teams that meant support us, including account managers, because they just hated this relationship with the customer that was broken, the project that was always late. There was just so much going on. And suddenly, I come in and the customer shouting, but there's nothing I can do because there's no trust. And then how do I juggle, one, what needs to happen with my team, with the work, the development work, while at the same time really fighting on the trust piece with both parties. And that's what the manager needs to do in that aspect. So if you're working in that, looking into that, and you're thinking, where do I start? And I have to do it internally, then think about vulnerability, right? It's about bringing the team together, whether you start by maybe approaching people on a one-to-one, and during the one-to-one, tell them and share your frustrations, where you feel stuck, where you feel like, I want to help this team, but I'm really struggling here because there's a lot of conflict. We are not getting along together. And then you tell them, prepare them for that session that's coming up. So that rather than being this session is up, start talking, start with the one-to-one to build this relationship. It sounds easy, but if you are not someone that talks about how you feel and you don't have that vulnerability, it's hard to translate it. And vulnerability is not about crying. It's not about what people feel, oh my God, I have to be vulnerable in this room. No, it's about being completely honest and say the thing that you will not say in front of the people that work for you, but you know that they need to listen to that, so that they really need to understand the fact that I'm not here to blame you, but I'm also going through the same stresses you are going through because of what is happening. And that doesn't take, again, for me, it's all about knowing that I work in startups, right? There's not enough time. There's never enough time. So again, your one-to-one, change it by starting to approach each member of your team during the one-to-one and talk about that. They might still not open up because you're the manager at the end of the day, right? But they heard the message and stays with them. So then if you, let's say a week or 2 weeks later, you change one of the meetings into that gathering meeting I talked about, and you approach this with, I've already spoken to you one-to-one, but I wanted to really bring us here to really start looking into that, right? First, don't start with the positive on this one. You want to start with the negatives.
Okay.
Yes, because you want to get people to really just throw things at the wall.
Okay.
But start with you throwing things at the wall or things that are very key. And even if it's something like a mistake that you've done in the past, it doesn't matter. That's where the vulnerability comes. It's about owning the space without saying, I always do this wrong. But it could be, let's say, if there's a lot of projects coming in, but we never have enough time, then just put it there. You're probably the one that's telling them to work on those projects. Everybody knows that. But it's not about you being the problem. It's about the fact that we have a lot of projects. That's an issue. The team goes, oh, okay, he's brave enough to have done that. There will always be 1 or 2 people who will speak up. And because you prepare them before by doing the one-to-one, it's not cold, if you know what I mean. And they can actually see, oh, I thought you were just talking or it was just a one-to-one thing. Now we're moving, we're shifting. How do we build trust, right? And that's really what you want to do. And after that session, that's when you start with the experiments, knowing that people might not follow through because the trust level is still low. But if you think about the trust as a trust account, like a bank account, by doing the one-to-one, you put some money in, right? But by doing that meeting, you put some money in, and the trust is kind of slowly going up. And before you know it, you have a team that, especially if you follow through and you start working on those experiments, they see the changes, the trust keep on going up and up and up.
And so what you're really describing here is actually some of the practical steps that create a culture of play. But again, play is this like dirty word almost because we're super serious. Yeah. You know, it's okay if it's my startup, but especially if I work in a bigger organization or something, like suddenly I'm going to start talking about play, like Aneta. So how do I craft a culture or encourage a culture of play, reframe the word play as a positive thing? I'm finding it challenging. And then even if I solve that, how do I convince other people and bring them to my way of thinking?
Yeah. So one thing I do is I have a diagram where I'm more than happy to share that with you when I include that in the picture. Use those words, because what I've done is I use the word workplace playground, and I always talk about play. And I honestly, even if I was to go to the McKinsey company where everything is like so many organizational structure and word I have too many syllables, the principle is the same. People come to work to enjoy the play, and the play is your work, right? But then what I've done in that diagram, the word that I've used on there, like trust, direction, processes, are work that have a parallel to what happens at work. So if you want to, you can completely remove the concept of play and just keep it as your own dirty secret. But at the end of the day, what we want is to create the workplace where you go in and people want to do their job, knowing that there are things that I can't change. That's just the way it is. But there are things I can change. And how do you get people to think more about my circle of influence, like they talk about? What is it that I can change within my team? Because you can say, well, I want to change the company. It's not going to happen. Let's just be very honest, right? It's not going to happen. but you can change how you work with your colleague, the person you see every day, right? And then from that nuclear team, you can change how you work with your manager. And that happened to me. I fixed the product team, and I got to the point where from one of my clients, because there was just so much negativity, the other teams realized that now the product team is running really well. They started coming to me to tell on the issues they had on the marketing team. I'm like, oh, wait, my role is on the product team. Like, fine. So then I will speak to the marketing leader without saying, I heard this, but I will turn the negatives I heard in terms of, by the way, we have a lot of issues because we use the same designers for our marketing work, for your marketing work, your product work. How can us in marketing help you with the design work? Do we subcontract, but the final sign-off is on your side? Or is there another solution? You know what I mean? Because then the marketing leader realized that I'm fixing the issue without doing that, but because she's also seeing the changes, HR is seeing this changing in my team, the other leaders are thinking, is there anything that we can do? How can we work a little bit like this team?
Improve simple influence from within. So you got to kind of prove yourself first.
Exactly.
Interesting. As we start to wrap up, for my final question, my final kind of area, really, I want to take a slightly different tack.
Yep.
You do fractional CPO work, and I think a little bit about product side of a small business or a startup these days, especially when I'm working with startups, because everyone's like, my product is the hottest new thing. And I want a bit of a theory that in this age of AI, it's going to be almost impossible to stand out based on your product. About 10% of startups are hardware tech startups, and then the majority of the software startups are some kind of B2B SaaS or something that is building off of or similar to stuff that's already out there. Maybe 20% of people in total that will be able to compete based on product because they're designing something that's actually really innovative, something that's got IP or whatever. For those 80%, AI is going to make it so that it's almost impossible to stand out. So how do we continue to stand out in whatever we're building, whatever product or service that we're creating in this age of AI, where the AI might even be able to do it for us, or at the very least makes it so our competitor isn't really any different to us? How do we keep standing out?
Yes, I think the challenge these days, as you said, is you're absolutely right. I mean, in the day and age of AI, whenever you build something or you think you have a solution to something, you need to ask yourself, will I still be around in 6 months? Not even a year. I think everything is moving really fast. And I think one of the key things that is really, really key and also very challenging for startups is to understand the processes or the wider picture of why do people would do what they do and how do they do it. You need to assume that a lot of the things that you're building, if it's just on a day-to-day answers or things like that, it can be taken out very easily. You want to come in more in the space where AI is still not very strong at the moment. And one is strategy, and two, understanding how the bigger picture is and how do you simplify that. And how do you do that? Is to do that one thing that is very, very hard to do, especially for first-time entrepreneurs, because it's not that fun. Again, it goes back to what we like at work and what we don't, but really obsessing with the problem, right? So if you need to really understand what is the problem that I'm solving here, and what is the wider problem, and how do I do it better? So we're moving from just solving this. It can be in the same area. So for example, I was speaking to a client of mine, looking into the marketing aspects, right? And how do we improve SEO and things like that? Even for her, and I love the approach she's taken, because you could say, well, I can help with making sure that all the blog posts have the right SEO, but that's going to go away. It's a real problem that a lot of companies have. But it's a problem where they look into that and say, oh, yes, your platform is solving this for me, but I use an AI tool. Okay. But what is the problem or the worry that people have at the moment in marketing? Am I going to be discovered using AI? Or SEO, forgetting AI for a second. One of the biggest problems with SEO for large-size companies, especially more so mid-size and lower, you don't really know when it starts working. You know, because SEO is kind of a black box. Okay. Those who work in SEO really understand it. They will say, okay, I write blog posts, but what are the topics? Okay, I can go to this tool. They will tell me what topics to write about. AI will write it. Yeah. But how do I know it's working? Right? What are the other strategies? I can do X, Y, Z, but how do I know it's working? So what she's working on fixing is not the actual tool, it's solving that problem. How do I know it's working? Because that's not a problem that AI will solve, at least not immediately, because you need a lot of different types of knowledge that you can't craft just because you use AI. You need to be an expert in marketing, and she is, and she's done the job for several years. She knows all the parameters and how to bring it together. AI will give you the answers to each parameter on its own, but not to the full vision to then really answer that. So that's how you need to think about that. What is the main problem that they have and how are they working so that you can get those parameters? And within those parameters, how do you want to tackle it, knowing that AI will help with the lower level and you are bringing something that can sit on top of the AI. So even if you want to build a platform that's A to Z, where you have the higher and lower level of AI, why would you? Right? You first start by building the highest level of value, things that people cannot get because they need to string along a lot of different things first. How do you give them that? And then the AI will come in. So when you're building that, you might say, right, so if I know I need to do 3 different things at the highest level, so for example, understanding how the blog posts that I have are helping me converting, whether the SEO strategy is doing, I still need to build the lower level. Well, you don't build that's when you start looking at existing tools, AI agents and things like that to help strengthen your platform so that you focus most of the development work and budget at the highest level, you show the value, and the more investment you get, the more you can start going down, if you actually, depending on what you're building or if you need to.
So you're actually describing less features.
Less, it's not about the number of features, it's about the impact. More impactful features. You know what I mean?
It's already the case though, like pre-AI, no?
No.
So pre-AI, more features was better.
No, I mean, it's never been better, but it's what we feel is better.
Okay.
There was this statistics, I'm writing a post about this. So the statistics about, I think it's about 80% of the features that are in platform, forgetting AI, right? 80% of features in most platforms are not used very often.
Okay.
Only the 20% are actually the core. So if you have, for anybody actually, if you're really thinking about digital transformation in a way, then look at your statistics and look at those 20% features, because they're where tomorrow will need to be, right? And how do you hook up those 20% and bring more impact and really understanding people's pain based on those 20%? What happens is, it's easy to say that, but knowing the 20% can also be challenging. And the second aspect is, if I have a conversation and I want to sell something, it always feels like the more I have to sell, the better it is. And this is what I go back to, what I call the kebab analogy. What you want to build, especially in the early days, is a kebab, right? Like a kebab van, right? If I ask you, right, 7, we go for lunch. Let's go to a kebab shop. You're like, seriously? At 12 o'clock? 3 a.m., we've been dancing and drinking responsibly. We're coming out of the nightclub. We're hungry. There's a kebab van, but we are really hungry. Are you going to look it down or down at the van and say, oh, I don't really want to eat a kebab from a van? Or you're going to be like, oh, food.
Sure, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what you want. A startup first product needs to be a kebab, right? It needs to be.
Okay. What was that?
Let's see, you get it.
Yeah, I get it. Like, if I'm gonna buy from you because I'm really hungover and you're the hangover cure or something, like, or I'm really hungry and you're the best thing around, it's gonna taste really nice. Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Even if you know that I love a nice low carb, low this, whatever, I want to go to Waitrose and wait until, it opens up. Great for you. It's closed. Right now, that's the only food that's around. So what you do, you eat it. And that's the things, if you look at startups and you look at those who are bigger now and even those who are small, why do we start using those tools, right? So years ago, I got a license for a platform called Magic. And that platform was a bit clunky. But I loved it. It did one thing and one thing only, and did it well, transcribing podcasts. And I started my podcast, and I used to pay for people to transcribe it for me. And they came out and says, look, we know that we want to build a platform where you can transcribe a lot of different types of content, and then you can start creating blog posts and all of that stuff. And we also want to put an engine that helps you with the marketing flow. So, for example, you have transcribe your podcast, and then after that, you can, this text needs to be rewritten and put online, and you can flow it, like track it as a to-do list. They could have started with all of that, and that's what they have today, and it looks brilliant. But that's today. When they first started, I think I used them 2 years ago when I first started using them, they had the very minimum, right? And it was a kebab. There was no bells and whistle. They didn't have tons of features, but they were famous kind of instantly in the podcasting world because they solved our biggest headache. They gave us content, they gave us transcriptions, and even before the actual blog post, because at the beginning the AI wasn't really good, so the blog post, you kind of had to rewrite it. It wasn't really nice. Now it's much better. But you saved my time because I don't have to find another freelancer to transcribe it for me, send it to me, and then I write a blog. Now I just go, finished, online, get the link, put it there, transcribe, get the transcription, send it to someone. Or even the blog post that wasn't really well was already 60% there, right? Give it to someone and says, right, can you polish it so that it's with our tone of voice and it's much better? I'll put it on the website. That is kind of how you need to really start thinking about that. But unfortunately, we are in a culture where the more is always good.
Seems better.
Yeah.
I do see this a lot. I'm sure you do too. It's like this feature and that feature. Oh, the product's not ready, so I'm not going to launch it yet. And it's like, actually, you just need like one or two really good things, some promises of some other things, make it cheaper because it's like earlier on or something, and just build a big user base off of that organically, or focus more of your attention on marketing than product. I think there's again, going back to fear, there's a fear there of like getting something out there. But in the age of AI, you're going to have no choice. You just have to focus on something core that's actually like game changing. It can't be Uber, but slightly different, because it's just, I can do that myself now. I can do that on Airplit in Ghent or something, It's really interesting. Let's break this one home. But I love this because it's been very, very practical, and it's applicable to wider audiences than I usually have on here, which is really, really cool. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you. This has been fun. My final question I ask everybody who comes on the show. The show is called Lost in Searching. So I'd love to know, what is the number one question that you are still searching for the answer to in your own life?
What is 93.0 is going to be?
Going to be?
Yeah.
What is she going to be?
Who is she going to be, or what is she going to be?
There's a big difference between the two. I think there's a big difference between the two.
Not really.
Okay.
Because we don't really know what and who either way. And it's really about taking this concept of experimentation further, because I don't really know who or what is she going to be, what she's going to be doing. But again, I know that there is room for improvements, and I'm searching for that improvement, but I don't know exactly what I need to search for. So that we'll have a lot of experiments on the way to finding it. But I don't know when will be the milestone to finding it either. So it's kind of just going on a journey. But I will know when I've made that shift. Because I've been tracking it, so that's why I'm already on 3.2. So I know when I've made that shift. But I'm still in that process.
Yeah, and that's really cool. I think because you've got that tracking, I was going to say as well, you will know when it's there. It'll be like a light bulb moment. Oh, she's here.
Yes.
I'm low now. This is great, right? And in the process, it will just be a continued exploration. I guess I was going to ask, like, what are you doing for that exploration? What are you doing to keep learning and keep figuring it out? And the answer is probably that experimentation that you mentioned earlier, right? It's just keep micro experimenting in every little thing you do, I assume, at work, personal life, in the way you operate day to day, in the way you think. You mentioned this earlier, actually. We didn't touch on it very much. The way that you think, creating who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you think about this and you think it's, where do I stop? Same thing. Listen to this podcast and pick one thing that you are going to do. I've listened to other of your podcasts as well. They're great. There's just so much advice that's being given there. The problem that we are in a society that scroll. Stop freaking scrolling. Pick one thing that you've whether it was a comment, a post, or something that's really inspired you and said, "Ooh, someone talked about this aspect of mental health. Okay, let me try and do it for a few days." And that's an experiment. Like one of my experiments was, how do I break? Sorry, you need to stop very quickly. How do I break negative mindsets when I'm very, very low? How do I get out of that? And I read somewhere that when you look up, it's really hard to be depressed, right? That's one thing. And second thing, in NLP, there's this program, this concept of reprogramming your brain.
Yes.
So if you were at a bar where you were dumped, that bar will always be associated with being dumped.
Unless
right?
you reassociate it, you reframe it or deframe it. Yeah.
Exactly. But how many people do that?
Very few. Conscious process. Exactly, yeah.
So that's what you need to do. You need to, especially when life is good, experiment using those principles. So I was walking around and every time I feel a bit down, I just look up. I look up and I realized that, I stopped thinking about what I was, because you can't cry, you can't be down when you look up. And then when I felt good, I just go around town, I go around Cambridge and different places I hated in the past, or something negative happened. And I will maybe say, next time I'll go with my best friend, we're going to have a drink there, we're going to have fun. So I reprogrammed that place so that rather than walking around with the chains that keeps on kind of like hooking me or sinking me down, I reprogram the space so that I have more opportunity of happiness. When I will feel down, which I don't know what's going to happen, when something is going to happen in my life, because I've done that work when things were good and I've experimented and give myself time to let it sink into my life and become part of my subconscious, I will walk past the same way. I will go to the train station, even if I have a really rubbish day. I'm like, actually, remember when I was with Christina here and or with Helen or whatever. You know what I mean? And that is what you want to do. If you look at your life, even forgetting about work, just in terms of self-leadership, that is what you want to do for a better tomorrow.
I love that you brought this back to neurology, because sometimes we ask, what does self-leadership really mean? What does this look like? Well, it looks like you deciding consciously how you want your life to look. Okay, so how do I work with my own brain? Consciously ask how you want to be programmed, like you would with any machine.
Yes.
And when you understand these little principles, they add up, like these most fundamental foundational principles. It's 80-20 rule, right? Yes. This is the most important 20% of things that will get me 80% of the way there. And now that bar isn't so bad. That place where that thing happens to me isn't so bad. Maybe it's even fun and light, enjoyable. And same thing with work. I reprogram my office into a place where I'm enjoying myself, playing, exploring, having fun, getting to know people, experimenting, growing, learning. And that 20% can have 80% change in your life, a radical change. I've loved this so much. Natalie, thank you so much for joining me and going on this journey with me today. I appreciate you.
And likewise, thank you for having me. And it's been amazing talking to you.
Thank you so much. Well, look at you making it to the end of the episode. Welcome. There's a lot more for you to do. If you're still here, there's a full playlist on YouTube down below. There's a recommended video probably somewhere around the screen or down below, and so much more. Give us a follow. Help share if you're here. Hey, maybe you enjoyed it. And look, this show only grows with your help. So again, I know you're probably bored of hearing it, but it would mean the world to me if you help us out and paid it forward and shared it around. And hey, you never know how this will help someone else. So thank you so much for being here, for being a part of it. Lots of love, and here is to your success. See you soon.